Kadosh, Boker Or, Shavua Tov, Masechet Gittin Daf Amud Aleph 85a. We are on the Mishnah. The Mishnah says, Hare at muteret lechol adam ella leabba ulavich, o leachi ulachich, o leeved uloved kochavim, ulchol mi she'en alav kiddushin kasher. Imagine a person gives a get to his wife. And he says, you're permitted to everybody, right? Except for, right, to my father or your father, to my brother, to your brother, to an eved, to a slave, or to a goy. Or lechol mi she'en alav kiddushin, which means that the kiddushin is not tofes, it doesn't grab on, right? It's a get kasher, right? These are going to be a good get, right? However, though, if he says, says that you're going to be right permitted to everybody, right? Which means that this woman was an amana from a previous marriage, and she got divorced, and now he says chutz mi kohen gadol, or a grusha v'chalutza lekohen gadiot, or a mamzer netina l'Yisrael v'tisel mamzil menten, which is whether it's a mamzeret or a netina, which is prohibited to an Israel, or a bat Yisrael to a mamzer to a netin. V'chol mi sheyesh la alav kiddushin, or to anybody that the kiddushin is chal, afilu ba'avera, even if it is going to be ba'avera, haget pasul. The get is pasul because since basically in all these cases the kiddushin is tosim, right, to the people that he's leaving over, it's a get that there's something hanging. It's like you're giving a get with a string attached, and then you want to yank it away from her. So therefore, we said that it's going to be pasul. So the same thing, even though she's prohibited to get married to these people, but at the end of the day, the kiddushin is tosin. So the fact that the kiddushin was tosin, and she says you cannot get married to such a person, so therefore you're leaving something over, and therefore. Sorry, it's not going to be a good get. Thank you. Okay. So again, if it's going to be that anyway, he comes and he says you're permitted to everybody except for your father. Anyway, you can't get married to your father. So it's not like you left anything over, or to your brother, or to anybody else. Except for you didn't. The second one, the kiddushin is sofsin, even though there's an isul. It comes into effect, right? That means even though there's a prohibition, but it goes into effect. Okay, fine. Says the Gemara. What is the general rule of the Reisha and there's the Seifa? Remember, the former part of the Mishnah was that the Kiddushin does not go into effect. The latter part of the Mishnah was that it does go into effect. Now, in each part of the Mishnah, we came and we brought down, there was a general rule. What was the general rule? After we gave the specifics, which was my father, my brother, your brother, an Eved and a Goy, then we said, or anybody which the Kiddushin is not Chal. That was a general rule. We did the exact same thing, by the way, in the latter part of the Mishnah. In the latter part of the Mishnah, we says you're permitted to everybody except for, like, the Almanat, the Kohen Gadol, Grusha v'chalutza Kohen Idiot. We give the details, and then we also gave a general rule. V'chol mi sheyesh alav kiddushin. Anybody that the kiddushin, it does go into the effect, even though it was with an averah. So again, one more time, we had the former part of the Mishnah, latter part of the Mishnah. In each one, you had the details, meaning like the examples, and then we had a general rule. Says the Gemara, Kilala de Reisha, the general rule of the Reisha La'atuye is coming to include Shar Chayave Kritut, any type of a Chayiv Karet. Remember that whenever there's going to be a Karet, when somebody comes and he gets married to somebody else, the Kiddushin is not Tosim. Meaning, if a person comes to his to his sister, right? To the sister-in-law, to their daughter, to their mother, all these cases, wherever there's going to be karet, which means they get cut off, kiddushin does not chal, meaning the kiddushin does not go into effect. Klala de seifa latu, and the klal of the seifa, which was a general rule of the seifa, comes to include shar chayve lavin, any type of a negative commandment. Because remember, by a negative commandment, it's asur, but it's still chal the kiddushin. The kiddushin still goes into effect. And then it says in brackets, for example, Armoni Moavi, or all these different things, Mitzri Shani, or Mitzri, and all these different types of things. Okay, says the Gemara, Ba'mine Rava Mirav Nachman, comes Rava and he asks Rav Nachman, imagine a person comes to his wife and he says, you're permitted to everybody except for Kiddushe Katan, right? Except for Kiddushin from a minor. What's the halacha? Do we say one second? We know that a minor cannot get married, right? Imagine right now a small boy, a 10-year-old, goes to a woman. Doesn't matter how old she is. right? Because it doesn't make sense if she's already going to be a 30-year-old and you have a 8-year-old boy or a 10-year-old boy coming and telling her, let's pretend she was a 13-year-old. Yeah, he got married to her after bat mitzvah, which is permitted. There's no problem whatsoever. Technically, even before, if it was the father, but let's keep things simple, right? She's a 13-year-old and he's a 12-year-old, right? Why? Because he's under bar mitzvah and she's a 13-year-old. She just got divorced from this guy, but this guy comes and he tells her, you're permitted to everybody except for kiddushin from a minor. So now, do we say that right now, anyway, the minor cannot get married to her? This 12-year-old, if he's going to come and give her a ring, even if it's a $20 million ring, and he tells her, doesn't matter what it is, there's nothing there. A minor cannot get married, right? A minor on his own cannot get married, right? There's a halakha that the father can designate a girl for him. But here we're talking about that the minor is going on his own accord, and he's going. It doesn't work. Or maybe we say, he's going to become, right? He's going to become an adult, and therefore it comes out that it's like an eshetish then, right? That means he's still an eshetish for this guy, and therefore there's still left over. Remember, whenever a person gives a get and he leaves a hole in the get with a string, and he's like going to pull the string, which means that he's got something to pull back from. So there's no marriage. You understand? Well, sorry, no marriage. Meaning there's no divorce because he's still attached to the husband in a certain form. So Elmaleh comes and he says, Tenitua. We already learned it. What do you mean? We already learned it. Ketana mitkareshet bekidushe avia. A minor, a girl, could get married with the kiddushim of her father. Amai, why? He says, we need it to be the same thing like viatzea vayita, which means since the ketana cannot do kiddushin, so therefore she can't get kiddushin either. Meaning, we always make a hekesh, a juxtaposition between marriage and divorce, because it says viatzea, she's going to go out. From divorce. Exactly, that she's going out, and then she's getting married to somebody else. So we learn out the marriage from the divorce. So we want to say that just like by the marriage, she cannot get married on her own. A minor also, she doesn't get married on her. She could only get married because the father comes and gets her married off. So to divorce. But she's going to become of an age that she could do this. So to hear she's going to come to an age, and therefore the get is going to be pasul. Okay, fine. Another doubt. Imagine he comes and he says to her, you're permitted to anybody except for the people that are going to be born. What does that mean? Anybody that's going to be born after the get, she's prohibited to. So now, why bichlal is she going to want to get married to somebody that's like 12 years younger or 13 years younger? Doesn't matter, but let's not get into that, right? We're just saying that he's coming and he's leaving something behind, and he's saying you're going to be permitted to everybody except for somebody that's going to become born. The guy wasn't born. Or maybe the same question. In the future, they are going to be born, right? We're on towards the bottom of Pei Amud Aleph, 85a towards the bottom. So Elmaleh, so he comes and he tells them Tinitua, we already learned it. Right? We said that what happens if a person comes and he says you're going to be permitted to everybody except for an evet, a slave, or an oved kochavim, or a non-Jew. In Ita, now if you're going to tell me that maybe in the future they could become, right, fitting for kiddushin, evet, so then it's also evet kochavim. Why? They could come and they could convert. Meaning you could have a non-Jew, right, that he could convert to become Jewish. Or you could have a slave that he becomes free, and then he's going to become 100% Jewish. Meaning, in our Mishnah, we said mefurash, if a person says, you're permitted to everybody, except for a slave or a non-Jew, it's okay. It's a good get. Why? Because anyway, she cannot get married to them. So the question though is, why? At the end of the day, in the future, he could convert. Now,
what does that have to do with, how does that equate with a person
so
who's yet born?
So therefore, just like the case of the Eved and the Oved Kochavim, in the future, he could convert, and we still say that it's a good get, and we don't pay attention to something that's going to happen in the future. So too, when he comes and he says, you are permitted to everybody except for somebody that's going to be born in the future, it should be the exact same thing. Right? Then what? That I'm not going to pay attention to that he's going to be born later on, just like this person could convert later on. I don't care. Right? Why? Because I don't care what's going to happen in the future. I'm looking right now. Right? You understood the equation. Just like we said that if a person comes and he tells his wife, you're permitted to everybody except for an Eved and Ovek Kochavim. It's a kosher get. We're not going to pay attention that he could convert. So same thing. You're permitted to everybody except for somebody that's going to be born. We're not going to pay attention that somebody's going to be born later on. So Elmaleh, right? So therefore that's what he says. So the Gemara says, no. Hanach lavli gure kaime. He says, Hane litialadu kaime. He says there's a difference between birth and conversion. A regular non-Jew, he's not in the status quo that he's supposed to convert. The status quo is that he's a goy. A non-Jew is a non-Jew. Okay, you're right. Some people come and they convert, but it's not the norm. Here, it's normal that people are born. People are supposed to be born. You understand? Unless you're not going to have the eggs, right? People are supposed to be born. It's natural. It's the exact opposite of the conversion. The conversion is something that you'd say in a cloud coming out of the general rule. Not this. This is normal for people to be born. So we deferred it. Okay, like we rebutted it. Next case, next safek. Chutz mibal achotah. Mao. What happens if a person comes and he says, you're permitted to everybody except for the husband of your sister? Yeah? Right now, right, as long as the sister is still alive, she cannot get married to him. So there's no problem. The cat is kosher. Or Dilmar, maybe the sister will die, and then she's going to be permitted to the husband. So therefore now, so that means there's still something left behind, and therefore it should be pasul. So what's halacha? Right? One more time. The husband cannot get married to the meaning like this. A brother-in-law cannot get married to a sister-in-law. We're talking about the sister's husband.
While the wife is alive.
While the wife is alive. Right? That means even if they both get divorced, it doesn't work.
Oh.
Even if they both get divorced, it doesn't work. But if the sister dies, she becomes permitted to the brother-in-law. So he comes and he says, when he came and he said, you are permitted to everybody except for your brother-in-law, which is your sister's husband, right now the sister's alive. So therefore it's the kosher get. Or maybe do I look at the future? Maybe the sister's going to die, and now all of a sudden there's something left behind because now she can't get married to the brother-in-law, and therefore it's not going to be a kosher get. So Elmaleh, he says, Tenitua, we learned it. What about the Eved and Nuvei Kochavim? Just like Eved Kochavim, Nami, maybe they're going to become Jewish, right? Maybe they're going to convert. So answers the Gemara, Gerut, something very similar to what we mentioned before, but in different words. Gerut lo shchicha. It's not common to have people coming and converting. Meaning the conversion is not something common. It's out of the general rule. Death or birth, before it was birth, now we're talking about death. Death is common. What do you mean common? Meaning people die. It's natural. The nature of the world is people die. And there's no such thing yet as a pill that somebody pops a pill in their mouth and they live forever. It doesn't exist. And it will never exist because it was a decree from Hashem that everybody has to die. So no matter what the guy wants to do, it doesn't exist. So, mita. Huh? Imagine the fourth doubt. Imagine right now a person comes and he says, you're permitted to everybody except for bilat znut. Meaning, you're allowed to get married to anybody that you want, but you're not allowed to have immoral relations. Meaning, to have a good time, to sleep around, doesn't exist. Meaning that if you do that, you're not divorced. Mao, what's halacha? Beniswina lo shiyed. To do with marriage, she didn't leave anybody over. Meaning she could get married to any single human being. So technically speaking, it should be a good get. Or Dilmar, maybe, she left over in the relations, which means that they're still in the relations that all of a sudden right now, imagine right now she has relations with some guy and she didn't really get married to him. And all of a sudden she's still married. Like, how does that sound? It sounds crazy. So Elmaleh says, Tenitua, we learned it. What happens if he says, you're permitted to everybody except for my father and your father? Uvemai, what are we talking about? If we're talking about marriage, it doesn't exist, the marriage of her father and his father. Abba ve'avich b'nei nisvinu. We're talking about znut. Le'abba le'avich but anybody else there is shier. So therefore, it's considered a get pasul. So says no, maybe we're talking about b'niswin de'avar v'insiv, that he actually transgressed and he got married, which means that she actually went and she got married to one of these people, even though the kiddushim are not tofsim, and therefore it's not going to be considered a shiur, right? Fine. There's another 5 doubts now that we're going to learn, right?
Can we make a connection with the
Is you're permitted to a husband or to anybody except for shelo kedarka, except for not the normal way of cohabitation, which means through the back part. Mao what's halacha? The kedarka urushia. He didn't leave anything over for anybody. If it's
Did we
normal.
decide an answer to the one about marriage yet?
No, we said that it should not be a good one. Or Dilmar, maybe it should not be a good get. Or Dilmar, maybe Mishkevei Shakti. It's what Mishkevei Isha. Mishkevei Isha means any type of form of lying down with a woman. Doesn't matter whether it's through the front or through the back. Or Chutz me'afarat nedaraich, you're divorced except for hafarat nedarim. What's halacha? To do with marriage, he didn't leave anything over. Or Dilmar, it says which means only the husband could do hafarat nedarim and akaban. So if the husband cannot do that, he left over. Or chutz trumatech, or except for that if she's going to get married to a kohen, she's not allowed to eat truma. What's halacha? But his sween, he didn't leave anything over. Or Dilma, maybe kinyan kaspo, it's his money, and the kohen's money is allowed to eat trumot masot. And if you're not going to let her eat trumot masot, it means that it's not his money. Or chutz mirushatech, or except for the inheritance, meaning she was a rich cookie, and therefore he wanted to inherit her. So he says, you're divorced for everything except for your inheritance. Your inheritance stays by me. So do we say, to do with marriage, he didn't leave anything over? Or do we say, no, that the one that is closest of kin, he inherits her, and therefore he's leaving something over? Or except for if you're going to get married with a document. Do we say that you could still use money or relations, kesef bia, but there's three ways to get married to a woman? Or dimar maybe that they're all the same. Teku. In all these 5 doubts, we don't have an answer. Why? Because technically, you're not really leaving over, but you are leaving over what? We're not sure.
You have to be, this is the Gemara.
Mishnah on the bottom of Pehe Amud Aleph. Gufo shel get. What exactly is the real get, meaning the language of a get? So that means this is the main part of the get. That's gufo, like the body of the get. You're permitted to any single human being. Rabbi Yehuda says, this is going to be for you a book, right? Whether it's going to be a scroll of divorce or a letter of divorce and a letter of Peturin is when you fire someone, but you let go of someone, basically, like you're relieving them, right? Okay, whichever one it is, right? So that's what it is. Okay, a letter of release, exactly. Which means that you could go and you could get married to any man that wants, right? Right? Gufo shel get shichrur, and the meaning the language of a get shichrur is hareya bat chorin or latzmech. That you are free,
emancipation.
Right?
There's no longer
divorce.
emancipation
Letter. Yes. Okay, that's a get shichrur. Get shichrur means an emancipation letter or a letter of freedom. So you are a free person, your daughter a free person, or you are to yourself. So says the Gemara, Pshita, I understood, it's obvious. Amala lishto, if he comes and he tells his wife, Hareya batchurin, you're a free woman, lo amar klum. He didn't say anything. Why? Because she was always a free woman. What does that mean? If you go, you tell your wife, right, you're a free woman. Right, you're going to be a dead man, yeah. Obviously, she was always a free woman. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. If he tells the shivcha, you're permitted to come into anybody. He also didn't say anything. Why? It has nothing to do with anything. Basically, you're mixing up the roles, right? If he comes and he tells his wife, you're to yourself. What's the halacha? Meaning, if you're going to tell her you're a free woman, she was always a free woman, so it doesn't make sense. But if you're going to tell her you're to yourself, what's halacha? Legamre kamala, does he mean that completely you're to yourself? Or only for melacha? That means for work. You're to yourself, you work, whatever you work is yours. That's the question. So Elmaleh Ravina Ravashi says, Ravina Ravashi, Tashma, we're going to try to bring a proof. The we learned in the Mishnah, Gufo shel get shichrur. What is the language of emancipation letter or a letter of freedom? Hareya bat chorin le'atzmech, u'ma avda dekan le'gufeh, just like an eved, that their body is acquired to them. And still, when he told him, you are to yourself, he acquires his body. The wife of the body of the woman is not acquired to the husband. Some people think that the body of the woman is acquired to the husband. He can do whatever he wants with the body. It's not true.
No.
Right? The body is not yours. You understand? Your wife is your acquisition, but the body is not yours. You cannot come and start doing whatever you want with the body. Right? Right? Shouldn't it be like that? Right? So obviously it should be good then. So
they're saying right now it should be a good divorce.
Exactly, it should be good. So Elmaleh Ravina the Ravashi, right? So says Ravina to Ravashi, right? Elmaleh Lavdo, if he tells his Eved, Enli esek bechamao, I don't have nothing to do with you. What's the halacha? So Elmaleh Ravashi, Elmaleh Ravashi, Tashma, we're going to try to bring a proof to tell you we learned in the Braita, We said if you sell your slave to a non-Jew, so therefore the rabbis gave you a knas, a penalty that he goes out to lecharut, he goes out free. And he needs an emancipation letter from his
a
first
Jewish slave or any kind of slave.
Which one? We're talking about Eved Kenani.
Yeah.
Eved Kenani. Amar Rashbag says one of these words, Shelo katav alavono, if he didn't write a shtar, aval katav alavono, but if he did write a shtar, the shtar of the sale, meaning the sale document, is his shtar shichrur, is already a shtar shichrur. So if he comes and he runs away from him, he's completely free. My ono, what does it mean ono? Amar Shashad the katale that he says when you run away, I have nothing to do with you. Meaning basically he's already giving it that the second that the guy goes free, he goes free. That's it. There's nothing to do with him. Okay, fine. And therefore we see from here that the lashon of en liesek becha does help to free a slave. Okay, fine. Next, Rabbi Yehuda Omer. Rabbi Yehuda comes and he says, we're on the two dots, right? By the Mishnah where it said, Rabbi Yehuda says, "V'din diya v'lechi b'nai yivsev torchim kel shukin." B'mai kami palgeh. Says the Gemara, what exactly is the machloka between them? Okay, that's what the Gemara is asking. What is the machloka between them? Okay, so he comes and he says, Rabbanan Savri, the rabbis hold, Yadayim shed mochot v'yadayim, that when you speak in a lashon ktsara, which means in a short version, right? Which
partial
means,
declaration.
Exactly, thank you. A partial declaration, which means I cannot come and bring a proof from exactly what you're talking about. It's considered what? It's still considered yadayim. It's still considered good. And then, even though he didn't say the then, right, which means and this through this, muchaminta, it's still going to be muchaminta the what? That he's going to be megaresh.
Do we learn out from like he said nedarim?
Exactly. So Rabbi Yehuda savay yadayim shemuchol yadayim tamad katav lav den. The muchaminta vaygita. So it's much more then is with this paper, with this divorce. If he didn't write down the den. Maybe he divorced it with his words. Maybe the shtar is just a proof, meaning the document is just a proof in itself, right? And therefore, right, it's not really a get. So it's only a proof, it's not really a get. So Abai comes and he says, Haiman the katav gita lo lichto v'den, right? So it means basically you shouldn't write it with a yod, v'den. The mashma v'din, but if you write it with a yod, it's mashma v'din. What does it mean v'din? That means when you're coming, you're saying it's like a judgment. But not that there's a den, that this is your divorce, ela v'den, without the yod. So a person's not going to make a mistake and say v'din. Okay? So he says, v'lo lichtov, he get it. He shouldn't write, he get it. The mashma igrat, ela he get it. That means he shouldn't write it, that you get it with a yod. Right? Because if you write igrat is like a roof, a gag. But rather you get it without the yod. V'lo lichtov li mehach with a yod. The mashma li mehach, me to you, me to this. So therefore, no. But rather limchach without the yod, right? I'm sorry. You shouldn't also write limchach because then it's mashma like schok, like a laughter, like a mockery. The mashma kichucha. Okay. Next, when it says dityavyam dityatzvan tlata tlata yudin, each one has 3 yods at the end. The mashma tehevyan v'titzavyan, which is mashma lashon nistar. It's like a third person, right? That means it's not that you're speaking formally to somebody, right? But it's third person. Velurche levav, the teruchim levav the shirukin. You have to make long the vav of teruchim and the vav of shirukin. The mashma, right? Because if not, if it's not gonna be a long vav, it looks like a yod. It's gonna sound like trichim, which is grushot or azuvot or abandoned women's. Lorche levav dechdu. Also, you have to make the vav longer of uchdu. The mashma uchdi, because if not, it's going to be kadi. Kadi is nothing. Right, which means that he's kilu saying that he's divorcing her without nothing, without a document. Velo lichtov, he shouldn't write leit nasva with an aleph after the lamed, because it's mashma la it nasva. You should not get married, but rather lehit nasva with a hey. Ibai lehu. So now we're going to come and ask the following question: Ba'inan v'den or lo ba'in v'den? Do you need this word of bichlal of v'den or not? So Tashma dat kin Rava came in the institute to do with the get. How like fulano, like how do you say fulano, like ploni ben ploni, right? Whatever his name is, Mr. So and so divorced the son of so and so, came and he exempted and divorced his wife, right? Pluntin tete. That he was married to her from a long time ago. From this day onwards. It's not written. So says according to your reasoning, does it say everything in the get? Ela ba'ina nahachanami ba'ina. We also need it. That means we need this in the get, just like we need over there in the get. Miyomad dinan. What does it mean now? Miyomad dinan. He says la puke
You
from
didn't
Rabbi
put in
Yosef.
you're permitted to any man. That's required language.
Well, yes, exactly. That we're going to say also. So he says miyomad dinan is coming to exclude from Rabbi Yosef. That you always need the time. Meaning it's not just enough miyomad dinan from today. You need the date. If you don't have the date, it's not going to be good. Ula lamin forever, right? La puke. Pevav Amud Aleph, 86a on the top. La puke comes to exclude midba mine Rava Rav Nachman. The Rava comes and he asks from Rav Nachman. The Amar hayomi atishtu machar tishti. What happens if a person comes and he says, today you're not my wife, but tomorrow you're my wife? Does that help or not? Okay, fine. The two dots.
What does that mean?
Meaning if a person comes and he says, today you're not my wife, but tomorrow you're my wife. He divorces his wife on condition that one day yes, one day no. So does that help or not? So obviously we said that it doesn't help. But this was a question. This was a question whether it was kosher or not. Right, and according to some opinions, they want to say maybe it's actually going to be kosher, right? Obviously, we don't pass on that, but I'm saying, but according to some opinions, yes, because at the end of the day, today you're 100% not the wife, right? And tomorrow it is, right? Yeah, it sounds very interesting.
I don't.
You don't like that. You don't like
I
this.
just don't understand it. You mean he's saying I'm going to remarry you? I'm just going to be a divorcee for one day?
No. This divorce is a divorce for every other day, and every other day of that other day, Sunday, Tuesday, Thursday, Shabbat, you're divorced. Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, or Monday.
There's no such thing as that.
Okay,
right?
But that was a question. Obviously, there's no halacha l'maseh like that, but it was a question asked in the Gemara. Okay. Then the two dots said, before shall get shichrur. We said, what was the main body of the emancipation letter? So Rav Yehuda came and instituted a shtar mechira and a sale letter of slaves. Avda dinan mutztak leavdo. This eved, right, is stopping, meaning he's like stopping his avdut. And he's separated and he's giving over to freedom. And from any alilot, from any types of libels, right? Or anything of the king or the queen. And any siman of avdut should never come upon him. Any type of like a sign of slavery. He's going to be free from any type of blemish, and from any type of boils which are coming out until now, until from basically until 2 years. Chadat ve'atik, whether new or old. Maya sute, what is his refuah exactly? Which means how do we come and we cure shechin that comes back? But so you just said the type of boils that are coming from 1 now until 2 years. Rabbi says gimbra zangvili, that was the ginger. Umartecha, type of silver. The kavrita gofrit is like sulfur. Thank you. Bechala de chamre, chometz of yain, wine vinegar. Umishcha de zeita, shemen zait, olive oil. V'nat pikchivara, neft lavan, which is like white petroleum. V'shayfele begat fadavza, and they're going to anoint him with this, right? With a feather of a goose. That's what they do. Okay.